Welcome back to Inside the Vault, Enterprise Bank's podcast series where we talk about topics of interest to our small business community in the region. Today, we're going to get back on the track of talking about the economy, but in particular, we want to talk about the state of the real estate market, and both on a residential basis and on a commercial basis. We did a similar podcast several years ago, I think pre-pandemic, on this topic, and with the market dynamics having changed so much since the pandemic, we thought it was a good time to kind of provide an update on this topic as relates to the real estate markets. With me again, who was also with me several years ago when we first did this, is Doug Lockard. Doug is the president of Kuzneski and Lockard Real Estate, which is a Howard Hanna affiliate, residential real estate brokerage firm in Indiana, PA, as well as president of Enterprise Real Estate Advisors, which is a commercial real estate firm with offices here near the bank in Allison Park. Doug, welcome back.
Thanks, Dave. It must have been such a popular guest. It took almost 3 years to get back here.
Yeah, so, obviously, a lot has happened in the economy overall, but in particular, real estate, has seen some real volatility, particularly since the pandemic a few years ago. Kind of to set the plate, I think most of us all remember the Great Recession. Real estate was kind of the oversaturation of the real estate market and highly leveraged financing and all that kind of crazy mortgage, those crazy mortgage deals that were out there kind of led to, in a big part, to the financial meltdown in the Great Recession. And now we're in a little bit of a different dynamic here because we have the effects of the COVID-19 related pandemic in 2020-21, and now we have an inflationary and higher interest rate environment. And all these dynamics kind of play into what's happening with real estate. So what I wanted to dig in with you today, Doug, is to kind of talk about some different aspects of that market. And we'll start on the resi side because I think everyone can relate to this if they're either looking to buy or sell a home, or if they're even looking at just refinancing a home at this point. So kind of general question, where are we right now with regard to kind of historical dynamics versus where things are at right now in the residential market?
Oversimplification is a transition. We've experienced over really the past 4 years, quite the unpredictable ride in real estate in general, but specifically residential. The pandemic certainly had very significant and marked impacts on the residential market.
Yeah, in a really different way than the rest of the economy, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there was a thought process when we, after we, last did this podcast, the sentiment once the pandemic hit is the bottom was going to fall out of the real estate market. Really across the board, didn't happen. There's considerable debate as to why the market reacted the way it did. Certainly there was lots of liquidity pumped into the system, both in the residential markets as well as the commercial markets. Folks were spent the better part of a year at home, saved up money, savings accounts, or liquidity really blossomed. Mm-hmm. And when things started to move towards the post-pandemic, people came out of their shells and they came out, with a vengeance.
Yeah, and in a very low interest rate environment at the conclusion of the pandemic.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, from where rates were right before the pandemic to where they bottomed out, and again, depending on where you were in the country and your market, I mean, you had 30-year fixed rates that were below 3%.
Yeah. I think I read that the bottom from the mortgage rate market residentially was probably like mid 21, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As we ventured into the latter stages of 21 through the first half of 22, the market really stayed fairly strong. Rates, even though they showed signs late in 21 and early 22 of creeping up, didn't really have much of a dampening effect. When rates started really ramping up later in 22, you saw quite a bit of market reaction in residential. Year over year in our region, overall residential sales were off just short of 20%.
Yeah, which
21 to 22. Now nationally,
we actually did better than the national.
We did.
Yeah.
But if you were bisecting 22 into the first half of the year and the second, low impacts early in the year and then fairly substantial. So,
right.
Just for example's sake, sales might have been down 5% the first half of 22, but then they hit almost 30% the second half to fall out for the year around 20.
Okay. And what's it looking like so far this year?
I mean, it's again an interesting dynamic for different reasons. Oddly enough, while sales are down, both transaction counts and volume, for the early part, and obviously we're only just completed February, the median and average home prices regionally have actually held their own or ticked up slightly. A couple of reasons for that. Inventory still remain very tight across most price ranges. So the buyers that are out there, albeit them fewer, and it is taking more days on market, longer time to sell, have not much to look at. So the balance of supply and demand still in some areas and in some price ranges favors the sellers.
Right.
Other reason you have a stable to slight uptick in average and median home prices, and this is probably common sense, the first people priced out of the housing market are those that are of less financial ability. So the transactions that are occurring tend to be in the higher price ranges versus lower. So when you have transaction counts dropping, but the activity there is in the higher price ranges, hence you see average and median home prices, I would say they've already plateaued, but they are still inching up largely due to those dynamics.
And that's a divergence from the national numbers too, I believe. And I'll just hypothesize here, and I'm not a real estate guy like you are, but at least what we see from the bank side is, we have, obviously no surprise, we have a fairly senior aged population here, compared to other markets that are relying a lot on first-time home buyers. And it seems like that profile, older couple, older individual, is not necessarily relying on borrowing to the same extent. So this interest rate environment we're in right now may not have as big as impact on prices or volumes in our region than as national. You agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a reasonable hypothesis. And our region has a pretty long history of being much less volatile than the national market as a whole, and certainly various regions of the country. So all those factors kind of come together, and again, our older demographic we don't boom as much as other markets boom, and we certainly don't retreat as much as many other markets retreat.
Right. So we talked about volumes, obviously, 30% nationally, 20% regionally. What about prices?
Again, housing prices, they've certainly plateaued.
Okay.
The activity in the lower price ranges has certainly fallen off more so than the mid, I'll call it the mainstream market.
Where is our average home price in the region?
Again, defining region changes that answer, but by and large, you're looking at a home. Probably the typical home is going to be $250,000 to $350,000.
Okay.
Now, as you venture away from the city and the suburban areas,
That comes down a little bit.
It does. So overall, that lower inventory is, helping us. But I do believe that have probably seen the best days of the 23 residential real estate market, and more challenging days are ahead.
Okay.
As you well know, the interest rate environment and latest economic news certainly suggests that interest rates are going nowhere but up.
Right. And I mean, it's been dramatic. I mean, we just talked mid 21, we're down in the 3% mortgage rate range. Now we're 6 plus.
Yeah. As I said, typically less financially capable people are priced out first. Those middle and upper ranges, as rates go up, tend to pull the trigger and make their purchase before it gets worse.
Right.
But there comes a time when rates will hit that even the more financially capable buyers are going to wait. Another contributing factor to low inventory, we're already seeing sellers being reluctant to put their homes up for sale because they think the market is, has plateaued and perhaps heading, into a buyer's market.
Yeah, because, I mean, let's be honest, most sellers have to buy something else to live in.
They do. So again, it's kind of a natural function of residential real estate where there's move-up buyers. You got to have something to move up to,
right?
If you're going to sell in a discretionary, decision.
Yeah.
Certainly, those that are relocating to or from the area,
they don't have a choice.
They don't have a choice, but those buyers and sellers that are making discretionary decisions are showing signs of pulling back.
Right. So within the residential realm, it's not like it was 20 years ago when it was single family homes and that was the primary supply. What's kind of hot right now? I know we have a lot of developments here locally, patio style homes, townhouse type developments. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, again, demographically, the patio homes, again, let's just say the 55 and over buyers that are downsizing,
right?
Those types of products still appear to have some momentum. Again, I would expect that to wane also as those folks that want to downsize don't have buyers for their homes, they stay put.
Right.
Okay. The other impact we're seeing is in, not to jump off of single family residential, but the rental market, multi-unit apartments and other forms of rentals have strengthened. And again,
that's always been kind of an inverse relationship, right? Between the home, the single family home market and the apartment market, right?
It has. When folks get priced out of being able to purchase homes, they either stay renting or they ultimately, just rent somewhere else. Recent releases from National Association of Realtors, you may have read, again, nationally, rents appear to have peaked.
Mm-hmm.
Another signal that buyers and sellers in the market are kind of looking at a pause. When folks were getting priced out of the housing market, rents were going up. I mean, they went up at fairly record rates, certainly compared to inflation. Those appear to have plateaued as well. So I think if you can, it's easy to overgeneralize,
right.
But buyers, sellers, landlords, tenants.
It's kind of a wait and see.
Exactly. It appears the impacts of the economic conditions we're in, inflationary
right.
and others, and the interest rate environment are causing, buyers, sellers, landlords, tenants to step back and pause. And I would say we're in that transition, as you and I are talking today. Where it goes from here, I think the consensus is, again, the housing market's going to continue to weaken because interest rates are going to go up again, further pricing folks out of the market and keeping sellers reluctant.
Right.
What I would advise anyone listening that's considering buying or selling, however, is you can't just paint the whole regional market with the same brush. It certainly depends where you're at, location.
Right.
and what the inventory levels of, say,
in that
homes
location.
in that location.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's real easy to get wrapped up in the national stats, and even though I'm drilling them down more
Right.
regional, best advice I can give anyone is seek out your real estate professional and have an evaluation done in your specific market.
Right.
If you find inventory is really low, you may actually get your home sold quickly, and it may actually sell it more than you were asking still. That's certainly the exception compared to the last couple of years. But where inventory is tight, it's still happening. Conversely, if there's a ton of inventory in your category, probably best to sit back and wait if you can.
Right. So kind of a little bit of a segue. You talked about, individuals reaching out to their real estate professional. That's being done in a different way now too. I understand your line of business in real estate brokerage has gone through a lot of changes in terms of how that process is delivered and handled with the advent of technology and different kinds of platforms, right?
It has. And I mean, like many industries, it's going to continue to evolve and evolve quickly. There are some apps for your phone now, one of which is known as Nestor, where you can literally drive up to a home that you see on the market, take a photo of it, and their database can tell you the bedroom count, the square footage, and in some cases, I'm not sure I understand the data source, when the roof was replaced, when appliances have been replaced, HVAC, what major renovations have been done, right on your phone. So not to say or wish that real estate agents are going to be a thing of the past.
Right.
The technology is really advancing, specifically on the residential side, to allow the consumer, be they a seller or a buyer of a home, access to data and information that, I know I'm dating the technology that you used to get from a website or from your agent.
Right.
So the technology is going to continue to advance. I will tell you it's much more effective in urban and developed areas than it is where the data is
more sophisticated.
Yeah, if you're in even if you're in you might not be all that far, say, from the city of Pittsburgh, you're not really considered rural, but the amount of data and transactional activity is such that the data isn't yielding quite the same degree of accuracy.
Yeah, I know we have that same struggle when we're doing lean searches and different things in rural counties. I mean, you got Allegheny County, it's fully automated. All those records are online and available through a website or an account. Some of these more rural areas, they're not fully automated or fully electronic yet. So I can see the data gaps that you'd be dealing with, which again goes back to the value of a good realtor. In terms of local market intelligence.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I'm biased. I've been in real
That was
estate.
a layup, by the way.
I appreciate the softball. But yeah, I mean, I've been practicing real estate since 1986.
Yeah.
I mean, suffice to say, the changes in the last really 5 years have been just astronomical compared to they were the prior 30 years of my career. So all that, in my view, is a good thing, for consumers. Information in many things in life, and good information is critical to making good decisions. That information is now far more available. It's
sometimes difficult to interpret without expertise,
and that's where the agent or broker still comes in.
Right.
I mean, I don't mean this to, I guess maybe I do. Everything you see or read on the internet, you can't believe. Somewhat the same applies with real estate. I think you can get a good direction from the information available through today's real estate technology. Yeah. But it still takes boots on the ground with actual knowledge, being involved in actual transactions, to kind of read those tea leaves and get or give good advice.
Right. Plus, it's still ultimately a negotiation between buyer and seller.
It is, but again, when both sides are fairly informed, I mean, in a perfect world, if both sides are well informed, have well-trained and experienced agents, you arrive at a fair market value, a fair price. When those don't occur, as with almost any business or any transaction, one party's either more or less informed or better or not represented by the folks they're working with.
Yeah. Well, let's change gears a little bit. I'll ask you to take off your Kuzneski and Lockard residential hat and put on your Enterprise Real Estate Advisors commercial hat. Obviously, that's a market near and dear to me, being a commercial lender at the bank, and much more, I don't want to say, much more complicated
Yeah.
in the commercial realm, because we've got so many different property types and so many different dynamics that are out there right now. So let's talk overall again. What have you seen or what have you heard in terms of what's going on overall in the commercial real estate market from a sales volume pricing perspective?
Again, overall to this point, I mean, year over year, I did see some declines, but not the same levels as the residential market. Okay. The decline, and again, it's awful tough because the categories
These are so various. Yeah.
There's unlike homes, the need of the user very much drives the demand as well as the value. So, as a categorical statement, transaction counts were down, but really only about 5%. Again, average and median commercial sale prices were still up year over year, about 10%. I'd have a similar comment. My belief is those are plateauing if they've not already plateaued.
Well, there's a direct, and we'll get into this here in a second, but there's a direct correlation on the interest rate environment and commercial values, because it's basically, commercial values are driven off the income that the property produces, and as the borrowing rates go
or
up.
the overhead it produces for the business that's producing products or services.
Right.
Okay, so is their cost of doing business, because the interest rate on a home, not that it doesn't affect, inflation affects everybody,
Right.
but on a homeowner, you're getting a 30-year fixed rate in most cases, so your exposure is pretty well fixed.
Defined.
Right.
Yeah.
Not so much in commercial. Look at what's happened in commercial rates here, just in the last 6 months.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Just for point of comparison for our listeners and viewers, I mean, soon after the pandemic, when the commercial, the interest rate environment was much lower, we were doing commercial loans typically in the 5% range. We're now in the 7+% range.
well, and certainly when you take that into account, and typically commercial loans are shorter term, than residential. I mean, that drives up the cost, or certainly hits the cash flow
Right.
quicker and harder, in the commercial sector. So I think the impact on the commercial market is really already plateaued, and with what it sounds like a few more rate hikes here, maybe as soon as this month and beyond, are going to start taking further hold and contract, if you will, or impact the commercial market.
Yeah, because you've got operating costs going up for companies because of inflation. You got their borrowing costs going up with the interest rate curve, and rents aren't necessarily going up.
Right.
So you get this compression. So what has to give? The value of the property,
Right.
and the amount of borrowing.
And like any
Yeah.
other market, though, there are segments that are...
let's kind of get into that, because it is a tale of 10 cities.
Yeah.
Meaning, we have some property types that are just booming, and
Yeah.
we've got others that are depressed. So it's kind of hard, like we said, to put a brush on the whole thing. So let's get into some specifics. Let's talk about the hot ones. Warehousing.
Yeah. And
industrial goes with that, but
it does, and a lot of the industrial is a combination of the actual industrial activities and the warehousing needed to conduct it. So warehousing started taking off rather rapidly. I'm going to call it during, but certainly immediately after the pandemic.
Is that related to e-commerce?
Essentially, yes. Obviously e-commerce had been growing fairly robustly as it was, again, with consumers of all types, businesses and individuals, sitting at home, for lack of a better word, and realizing that they could still make the purchases and things they needed online. It just caused the need for warehousing and logistics to explode.
Yeah.
I think it's a given that we're not going back to the good old days, and the demand, albeit slower, in e-commerce is still accelerating well above every other business transaction type or even personal transaction type. So I think if you look again around the country, and there's some of it going on regionally, despite construction costs, construction of new warehousing and logistics facilities are continuing at an accelerated rate or pace.
I think there's probably another dynamic there that is kind of related to the pandemic. Obviously, supply chain shortages and delays really caused problems for a lot of businesses. And everybody that I'm talking to on the small business side is increasing their inventories now to avoid that.
Yes.
In the future, and that needs space.
It does. And again, I think that's where you feed on the industrial space. I mean,
Yeah.
those that are already in manufacturing or industrial, manufacturing processes learned their lesson quickly from the supply chain meltdowns, caused by the pandemic. So everybody used to be lean and mean. It was not the best practice to have a lot of inventory and have your capital tied up in those resources. Well, we learned a real quick lesson, why the pendulum swung too far. So again, the warehousing of specifically the raw materials and the others to get things to market, and then on-site inventory, if you will, for the production and manufacturing of those goods, certainly changed dramatically over the last 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. And the nice thing I'm seeing with the warehousing component is, a big factor is logistics. And we have some rural parts of our market that are very well logistically situated, to benefit their warehousing spaces to benefit from that.
Yeah, and it to the extent you can categorize it this way, it has created some sprawl.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously in more urban and developed areas, again, the inventory is tight, land costs and other things,
right,
not to mention construction costs. So companies are able to weigh out the, let's just call it the distance factor. I can be another 20, 30, 40 minutes down the road and have my facility, and my cost of that facility are less than the difference in transportation cost to cover the distance.
Yeah.
Okay.
So obviously warehousing industrial's hot. We already kind of alluded to the fact that multifamily seems to be still pretty strong because of this dynamic with, people getting priced out of the home market and moving in, to rental type situations. The one that is kind of on the bubble for me, and I'm kind of looking for your insight, is, retail. Everybody was talking about the demise of retail, right? After the pandemic and e-commerce going up. But now I'm starting to read that they call it experiential retail, or, smaller retail footprints are getting hot again. Is this true?
It is.
Okay.
You'd mentioned two different types. Experiential attracts a different type of retail occasion. But your other comment about the smaller spaces had a lot of traction too. Number of large name retailers that you all would have expected to see at malls or shopping centers at 10,000 square feet. Thought process with e-commerce and everything is they're going to shrink up, meaning consolidate stores and leave certain locations. Not really seeing that. They're shrinking up the stores in all locations when it's possible. Obviously, many of these retailers are in leases. You don't get to just stop paying your rent on space you don't need.
Right.
But where the opportunity comes up, they're shrinking their footprints by as much as 50 to, I would say 30 to 50%. Because again, bricks and mortar traffic is down, but they're also still seeing it, and the market presence still has a value, to them and the
And they can
consumer.
inventory product in a warehousing facility and deliver it.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Okay, so even retail has taken more of almost like a showroom warehouse type.
It's a good analogy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, in our area, that's particularly true because of our demographic. Again, being part of that, I'm still used to going to my retailer, touching, feeling, seeing what I want, and then buying it. Or if it's a repeat purchase, I'm going online. Okay,
Right.
I don't need to go back. So, our region demographically still values, and the retailers in our region still value a bricks and mortar presence, just not to the magnitude that there was certainly pre-pandemic.
Right.
Okay, but you are picking up on yet another trend, and that's the experiential type retail or visitor activity.
Yeah.
Whether it's not just about the item or items being purchased, it's experience related to all that.
Right.
So another reason, or another, hate to use the word gimmick, but another angle to keep customers engaged, both physically with the retailer and their products.
Well, let's talk about the big question mark, the office market. So, obviously, other than what it did to the economy as a whole, both positive and negative in some circumstances, COVID really changed the face of the office market, right?
Yeah.
And we still have some of the largest companies, particularly with such a tight labor market, that a lot of workers are remote, maybe forever at this point. But I'm understanding that the top of the market, what they call the Class A properties, but everybody's vying for the best space, the most flexible and employee-friendly space. But we, as most cities do, have office towers that are somewhat dated and are minimally full compared to what they were. What's your take on office?
I mean, you pretty well characterized, some of the dynamics going on. The office market in general, both for sale and for lease, has probably seen the biggest adverse impacts, post-COVID. There is still a significant oversupply of space, both for sale or for lease. As companies, evaluated, the effectiveness of remote working and to what extent they still needed, bricks and mortar or, the traditional office environment. That dramatic shift is going to take quite a few years to work itself out.
Yeah, I was thinking myself as a commercial lender, most big office leases, particularly when you get into big buildings, those are 10-year leases. And we haven't seen the impact of those leases coming due or maturing and what the companies are going to do next.
Well, you've seen some in the sense that many of the companies are shrinking their footprint and subletting their space. Okay? I mean, relatively speaking, what demand is out there is for smaller space. So if you're locked into a 10-year lease at $25 a square foot and you only need half of it, but you can rent the other out, even if it's only at 15 a square foot, you've mitigated some of your cost and ride out the lease. So the effects of subletting is still being felt. Overall, rents, have gone down and gone down fairly considerably. And I don't see that trend reversing. Again, I will say, I think the worst of it is over, but now you're looking at still a serious oversupply of space.
Yeah, and the best properties will rise to the top.
Again, I think that goes with any type of real estate. The best properties, and again, location,
And amenities now at this point too.
And I was going to say, I think you were alluding to that.
Yeah.
To attract employees back to the workplace, many employers are now looking at, and some of them, even if they're in a long-term lease, are creating the amenities in the excess space they have to entice their staff to come back, at least for several days of the work week, to be physically in say an office.
Right. And obviously the most hardest hit kind of micro segment of the real estate market is obviously the lodging market.
Mm-hmm.
Huge devaluations in the hotel business. Starting to see that come back, but not gangbusters yet. Right?
Yeah. Again, I think that's kind of been an industry that's been rocked to its foundations.
Yeah.
And I know we talk about it at the bank during loan committee in particular. The hospitality properties of all types, not just hotels, but again certain types of restaurants or venues got rocked, and I mean the devaluations were historic.
Yeah.
All of them have made somewhat of a comeback, but still remain a far cry, from the values that they would have commanded. And again, you're in a situation of such oversupply that it's going to take quite a bit of time. And obviously we should never forget things like COVID. I mean, I know there may have been
right.
Last one was 1917, Spanish flu.
Yeah.
Never going to happen again. Well, 100 some odd years later.
Right.
So, I mean, but I do think, time will fade those memories, and certainly some of the, the younger generation, may have new habits that won't change. Some of us that are a little older will gravitate back to what we used to be comfortable with. Right. So I do think a continued recovery in those segments is going to happen. It's going to be slow and long, though.
Right. Great synopsis. Multiple property types. Everything's location specific. Everything's property type specific. And those outside economic factors are having more impact than I think they probably ever have in my lifetime on the real estate market. Obviously, small businesses and consumers on the home side, we talked about the value of the expertise. So just give our listeners kind of a sense as to what the capabilities of both Kuzneski and Lockard and Enterprise Real Estate Advisors.
I mean, the capabilities are similar, just obviously in different arenas.
Right.
I mean, in the residential market, we possess the database and certainly the experienced agents and staff, to help a homeowner navigate, whether it's purchasing or selling, the market conditions that are specific to where they're located. Again, it's real easy to paint the market with a broad brush. But with the changes that have been taking place, and especially the speed at which they've been taking place, getting that information and getting good information, utilizing an experienced agent who's out there seeing and touching the deals that are going on is even more valuable today than it was when the market's hot.
Right.
When things are flying off the shelves, what expertise is really needed?
Right.
It's when the markets are in transition, be it in a good direction or not, that the advice becomes more valuable and more critical, for someone to make a decision that's in their best interest. Commercial side, all that is also true, but it is also much more important. The amount of data and the need of the small business owner or the investor or other things are vastly different. When someone's purchasing a home, they're obviously looking. So, and the transactional data, that's what all the buyers and sellers are doing. When you get into commercial or investment real estate, very much driven by the need, the intended use, and again, location, location, location. It's awful hard to get that expertise from simply, surfing the net. That is very much a function of how active your agent or broker is in the market, how wired they are to financing and other tools that you need as a buyer or a seller to accomplish the goal you need to accomplish for your business or commercial real estate need.
Yeah. Not for me to give the commercial for you guys, but I think one of the great advantages you have, particularly in the commercial realm, is you've got the expertise from an appraisal perspective and from a construction perspective, because that I see as one of the biggest challenges right now is the cost of construction and efficiency in the construction process.
Yeah, I mean that goes with any profession. I mean,
Yeah.
I happen to be an appraiser also, and I've been a real estate developer and in construction.
Yeah.
So again, especially if you're going to be in the need for commercial real estate advice, best process is to interview agents and brokers, try and learn their background, see how well it fits with what needs you're trying to accomplish. Doesn't mean that a younger agent may not be able to do the job. The fundamental knowledge will be there, but it's that experience factor in multiple areas, not just, hey, I've listed and sold real estate for the last 20 years.
Right.
Okay.
So how can our viewers and listeners find you?
Well, we have a website, Enterprise Real Estate Advisors. We can be found there. In addition to our website, our residential division, Howard Hanna, Kuzneski and Lockard Real Estate, can be found on Instagram and Facebook. Certainly, we're affiliated with the bank.
Right.
If you're already a customer of the bank, reach out through your relationship manager. And one of the things we provide clients and customers of the bank, whether they need real estate services or not, is sometimes helpful market data and information that they can use, not only as it pertains to real estate, but to their businesses. So we like to consider ourselves, especially to bank clients and customers, resources for information, not just a provider of brokerage or leasing services.
Right. And again, that's for our viewers and listeners, that's again part of the ecosystem we're trying to develop here at the bank that I've talked about several times in the past, where we've tried to get affiliates and subsidiaries that can support all the needs of a particular business. Doug, thanks so much for the time and expertise. Obviously, very unique times in your world and in the economy in general. For those of you that have specific questions or suggestions for future topics, you can reach out to us at insidethevault@enterprisebankpgh.com, and you can check us out in video format on YouTube and in audio on all the major podcast platforms. Thank you very much.